Timothy Treadwell, known as the Grizzly Man, a self-styled wildlife activist and documentarian who believed he had a unique connection to the grizzly bears of Alaska. For 13 summers, he ventured into Katmai National Park, living among the bears with no weapons, no backup, and a growing sense of purpose, or delusion, depending on who you asked. Alongside him for several seasons was his partner, Amie Huguenard, a physician's assistant with a quiet demeanor and a growing concern for Treadwell's increasing erratic behavior. On October 5, 2003, the two were killed and eaten by a grizzly bear. What followed was a media frenzy, a Werner Herzog documentary, and a cultural debate about where advocacy ends and recklessness begins. But before the shockwaves, before the autopsy reports and horrific audio recordings, there were two people alone in the wilderness, unaware that their final hours were ticking down. This is the story of the last 24 hours of Timothy Treadwell and Amie Huguenard. Timothy Treadwell was born at Timothy William Dexter in Long Island, New York on April 29, 1957. He grew up in a stable middle-class family and was reportedly a good student and a talented diver, and went to attend Bradley University on a swimming and diving scholarship. There, things began to unravel, and for unknown reasons, he claimed to be a British orphan, and on other occasions, he said he was from Australia. When he finished college, he moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting, but struggled with alcohol abuse after losing the role of Woody Boyd in Cheers to Woody Harrelson. In 1987, he legally changed his name from Dexter to Treadwell, a name from his mother's family. In the late 1980s, after surviving a near-fatal heroin overdose, Treadwell ventured into Alaska and encountered wild bears for the first time. That experience, he said, changed his life and was the start of his transformation from failed actor and addict to self-proclaimed wildlife advocate. Treadwell spent the early part of each season camping in an open area of bear grass known as the Big Green, located in Hallow Bay on the Katmai coast. He referred to this area as the Grizzly Sanctuary. He later founded Grizzly People, a non-profit organization aimed at promoting bear conservation. But unlike traditional researchers, he rejected tranquilizers, tagging, and distance. Instead, he got as close to the bears as possible, sometimes just inches away, speaking to them in soft tones and filming their every move. His critics, and there were many, accused him of humanizing the animals and placing both himself and the bears in danger. Treadwell's girlfriend, Amie Huguenard, was different. Soft-spoken, intelligent, and introverted, she had a master's degree in public health and worked as a physician's assistant in Colorado. She met Treadwell in the late 1990s and began accompanying him to Katmai. But unlike Treadwell, she harbored deep reservations about their proximity to the bears, and in private journal entries, she expressed fear, not of nature itself, but of Timothy's blind trust in it. By 2001, Treadwell had gained significant attention, receiving extensive media coverage both on television and within environmental circles. He often made public appearances as an environmental activist, traveling across the United States to educate school children about bears, and appeared on the Discovery Channel, The Late Show with David Letterman, and Dateline NBC to share his experiences. By October, most grizzlies in Katmai are preparing for hibernation. Food is scarce, competition is fierce, and Treadwell typically left the park by late September. But that year, things didn't go as planned. A dispute with an airline over his ticket and suspicions of bear poachers led him to stay longer than usual, an impulsive, fatal decision. He and Amie returned to the Grizzly Maze, the dense, bear-rich area of Katmai, despite having already packed up and left the park once. They pitched their tent in a location they had used before, an area Treadwell considered safe, though others saw it as incredibly dangerous. The bears were growing aggressive, and a new and familiar bear, later identified as Bear 141, had been sighted nearby. This bear wasn't part of Treadwell's so-called inner circle. It was older, angrier, and more desperate for food. On the final day, Treadwell filmed what would be his last footage: cloudy skies, blowing wind, and commentary about how harsh and unforgiving nature could be. He rambled about betrayal, hinting at conflicts with park authorities and his own disillusionment. Amie, as always, remained off camera. That evening, they cooked a simple meal, probably pasta, and returned to the tent. The audio recorder was turned on, perhaps by accident. What it captured was never meant for human ears. At around 11:45 p.m, the Grizzly attacked. The audio, approximately 6 minutes long, begins with muffled rustling, followed by Timothy's screams. "Come out here! I'm being killed out here!" His voice is panicked, hoarse, ragged with pain. Amie can be heard screaming in the background, pleading, "Play dead, fight back, get away." But it's chaotic. The bear doesn't leave. It drags Timothy from the tent, mauling him while Amie tries against all instinct and advice to fight it off. There is no video, only sound. Flesh tearing, bones snapping, and the wet, guttural breathing of a predator in its element. Treadwell's scream fades into gurgles, then silence. The bear returns, and Amie is now alone. For 2 minutes, she screams, and then she too is killed. The next day, Willie Fulton, a Kodiak air taxi pilot, arrived at the campsite to pick the couple up to catch their flight, but found their campsite had been abandoned and eerily quiet. Concerned for their safety, he called the park ranger. After a brief investigation, the mangled remains of Timothy and Amie were found. The horrific scene revealed Timothy's disfigured head, partial spine, and right forearm and hand. With his wristwatch still on, a short distance away were Amie's partial remains buried in a mound of twigs and soil. Stalking the area was a large male bear, tagged Bear 141, who was killed by park rangers during their attempt to retrieve the bodies. A second bear was also killed when it charged the rangers. It was very evident the bears were responsible for the demise of the couple. An on-site necropsy of Bear 141 revealed he had consumed body parts. The other bear was eaten by other animals before it could be examined. An audio recorder was discovered beside the tent, its lens cap still on. Autopsy reports confirmed the brutality of the attack. Treadwell had multiple puncture wounds and defensive injuries on his arms and hands. He bled to death within minutes. Amie's body was more intact, but evidence suggested a prolonged struggle. The coroner noted that both suffered extensive soft tissue trauma and partial consumption. Investigators pieced together the timeline. The attack began around midnight and lasted several minutes. The bear returned later to feed again. In their tent, authorities found journals, videotapes, and the watch still ticking on Timothy's severed wrist. The reaction was intense. Some regarded Treadwell as a martyr for wildlife conservation, while others labelled him a delusional narcissist who caused the deaths of both himself and Amie. Alaskan authorities were straightforward in their assessment. He was treating the bears like they were people in costumes, said one ranger. He needed to be removed from the gene pool. Werner Herzog's 2005 documentary, Grizzly Man, further fueled debate. In the film, Herzog listens to the attack recording but does not play it for the audience. He advises its owner, "You must never listen to this." The moment became emblematic of Treadwell's complex legacy, part admiration, part horror. This is alleged to be the recording. We can't verify that it is authentic, but still it is very disturbing and should be listened to with caution. Amie Huguenard's family stayed largely out of the spotlight. Some close to her believed she would have left Treadwell eventually. Others said she felt obligated to protect him, from himself and the animals he refused to fear. Timothy Treadwell believed he had a mission. He wanted to protect the bears, to give them a voice, to inspire a generation to care for animals the way he did. But in doing so, he crossed a line, the fragile boundary between respect and recklessness. Katmai's bear population did not benefit from Treadwell's presence. If anything, his familiarity with the animals endangered them. 2 bears were killed as a direct result of the attack, the very creatures he loved and died because of him. Today, Treadwell's story serves as a cautionary tale. It illustrates one man's foolishness masquerading as heroism and shows how passion can descend into obsession. It underscores that nature, no matter how beautiful, remains wild and indifferent to human sentiment or ego. Amie Huguenard is often remembered as collateral damage, a tragic footnote in Timothy Treadwell's story. However, she was more than that. She was intelligent, caring, and displayed incredible bravery in her final moments. Amie deserves to be remembered not just as Timothy's partner, but as a person in her own right. Someone who ventured into the wild despite knowing deep down that it was a dangerous decision. In the last 24 hours of Timothy Treadwell and Amie Huguenard's lives, they experienced silence, tension, and a feeling of impending doom. Surrounded by the wilderness they respected and possibly misunderstood, they became part of the natural cycle they aimed to study and protect. Their deaths were brutal, but they had meaning. They sparked a worldwide discussion about conservation, the need for boundaries, and the risks of romanticizing nature. They entered the wild looking for answers, but nature gave them something completely different.